you so much for joining us today. This is our second funders briefing for the year, and we have a very full agenda, so I'm gonna be turning it over very quickly. But first, I just wanted to once again say thank you, a word of appreciation to all of you, not just for your support, but also for all the conversations and all the encouragement that you have been giving us this year and for many years, for many of you that have been longtime supporters. We really do appreciate all that you do for us. We know that obviously so much has happened in the last 6 months as we're coming to the halfway mark of the year. We want to just take a moment to acknowledge all the voices that are being raised up in support of Black and Brown lives, for liberation, for social justice, for all the equity and justice issues that we stand for. We want to take a moment to acknowledge that and to say that we affirm and we know that there is strength in numbers. So having you be a part of our family, having you be a part of the work that we do means so much to us. And so I also want to say we will be moving through the agenda, but if you do have any questions, any comments, any thoughts, please do type those out in the chat box, and then we will be following up after the webinar to answer any of your questions or to follow up and do follow-up conversations. So with that, I will turn it over to Angelica Salas, Executive Director, to share our first portion of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aurora, and thank you all of you for joining us. And as Aurora has said already, thank you for for just really always being there for us and for supporting our work. I wanted to maybe move us in first to just tell you that our organization continues to be working in a virtual capacity. Most of our staff is working from their homes because of the stay-at-home orders and also the rise in COVID. We know that this is impacting our communities at alarming rates, with percentages in the 60s and in the 70s in terms of how Latinos and many of them immigrants are being impacted in terms of really the rates in terms of both being infected, and then also, unfortunately, the loss of life. And so it is we take this very seriously. And in that process, even as we're working from home, our administration team is working very hard to really put together what does the CHIRLA operations look like in a safe way in which this organization obviously works and prides itself in working on a one-to-one basis with our immigrant community. So what you see in front of you is just some images of how our organization will be changing in order to create social distancing. Most areas that are in contact with the public we've already included plexiglass, safety shields, especially in some of our legal services department where individuals will be working in that capacity. We've acquired personal protective equipment as well as a whole standard around disinfecting our offices and making sure that when we return to work, our organization really cares for the safety of our client base as well as the safety of our staff. And so more to come on this. Our perspective is that we will be listening, and as it should be, we will be listening to our county health officials in guidance. And as you know, we're a statewide organization, so we're paying attention to both county and state guidance as we move forward. But we're ready to go. And I also wanted to share that we've been very successful in meeting the needs of our community, even in this moment of staying at home and also what I would say virtual programming. So the next slide, I wanted just to share a couple of things briefly, because most of the information you will receive directly from our program directors today. In terms of an organizational update, and We will have lots of graphs later on, but I just kind of wanted to let you know that we've been working very hard on policy and advocacy. You're going to hear from our director, Joseph Viella, around some of our wins at the policy and advocacy level, but also some of our challenges that we still have to move forward. We were able to win the Disaster Relief and Assistance Program for Immigrants. You'll hear more about that today, but that basically allowed for $75 million to be allocated for our community. CHIRLA is one of the providers of this program. Lots and lots of learnings around that, around both the win, but also moving forward the implementation of the program. In addition to the disaster relief program, we've been able to supplement those resources with additional relief for our families, both working with LA County, with independent philanthropy, with as part of our coalition, our national coalition, the National Alliance for Domestic Workers, as well as the California Coalition for Domestic Workers. So really coupling resources together to really get out to our community that is in desperate need. We have implemented new programs that have really sought to go out to our community in a virtual manner. And I just want to mention a couple of those programs. One of them is CHIRLA en tu casa, which does programming on Facebook Live on a weekly basis with key issues of the day, having thousands of individuals sign in to watch. And then our very successful Cuídate y Cuéntate concert that reached over 180,000 individuals who were watching live, and we partnered with Latino musicians and artists and poets together to bring out a message of Cuídate, Cuéntate. Take care of yourself in terms of the COVID-19, but also Cuéntate, really uplifting the census. I want to maybe just say that the DRAI program also forced us to really upgrade our phone systems. We had over 1 million calls into our phone lines on the first day, reaching our Facebook, obviously our Facebook, but also our webpage. And what we saw is both systems crashed. We worked with our telephone company and with our systems provider for our website in order to really upgrade at the highest level so that the community could reach out to us and that we can then provide service. These are moments in which they really push the organization in order to really look at its infrastructure. And while we had really invested strongly, this was an unprecedented need. And I just want you to know that some of the changes that have been instituted organizationally have been really significant. And then I want to just finish my set of presentation, maybe to move forward to the next slide, is to really talk about this moment. And so we're dealing with multiple crises. We have the pandemic, the global pandemic, but we also have the economic crisis that our families are dealing with and workers, and also the COVID crisis connected to the economic need of individuals. And at the same time, we're also dealing with a crisis we've always had, and which is that of inequality, injustice, and racial disparities, systemic racial disparities, and systemic racism. And so you'll hear more about that through our other presentations, but I really want you to know that CHIRLA has been working very closely with our Black brothers and sisters, following their lead and their leadership, and in really inserting ourselves in the best way possible in order to assist our communities in this very critical moment, and that we offer what we learned around budgeting and around advocacy to really move some of this agenda forward. And then just to finalize in this moment, we also want to announce to you that we will move forward with our America's Family, which is a feature-length film that we will be completing this summer. America's Family is a film that goes as part of our series of Know Your Rights films for our community. This one really deals with families who are facing deportation and who have faced deportation and who are forced to then go back to Mexico. But the film is very important. Anika Tours, who is the director, the main artist moving forward in this film, she is very cleared in her vision around intersectionality to really show our diverse backgrounds. The main character in the story is Afro-Latino, really to bring forward these issues of racism and how they intersect with the immigration system. We are incredibly excited about this project. It is a labor of love. Filming has happened both in Los Angeles, in Mexico, in Tijuana, and also in Oaxaca. And so we will be inviting you. We will be receiving more information about America's Family and how you can support this project, but also how it advances both our fight on immigration reform, but also advances our push for recognition of our Afro-Latino immigrant and immigrant community as well. And with that, I'm going to pass it back to Aurora so she can continue to guide us in terms of the rest of our agenda for today.
Thank you so much, Angelica. Next, we will be hearing from Polo Morales, our Director of External Affairs, to share more with you about our coalition work. Take it away, Polo.
My name is Polo Morales, External Affairs Director for CHIRLA. Thank you for that introduction, Aurora. I'm going to talk a little bit slower just because sometimes the sound of my internet goes out. So just with that caveat starting today. So in terms of our coalition work, we've been involved in advancing pro-immigrant policies at the state level, at the local city and county level for a very long time. We've worked also alongside many various issues, including criminal justice and the different intersections around environmental issues, you name it. Everything that impacts immigrants impacts all Californians. So we take that, thought very seriously. As we make advances on immigration issues at the state level, we've also been working locally to advance some of the changes that this moment calls for. And so as we've seen a rise in the push to support Black Lives, the Black Lives movement in this moment, we have been able to continue based on so many years, 30 some years of building coalition, of working with different organizations to be able to sit down, or virtually as it is the case right now, and use those relationships to figure out how we can impact, the call for either the people's budget, the call for police reforms or changes. All these issues are something that are very, very critical to all of our communities. And so in building these relationships over the course of many years, we're able to work together and really try to figure out how we can advance these issues. And so, I'll talk about a few of the coalitions that we have been partaking in and working with to that end. And so we have been working with the Push LA coalition. We've also been working with the LA Solidarity and Alliance table around policing practices and really trying to change just the major...
Polo, I think we're losing you a little bit.
So a collaborative effort.
Polo, can you hear me?
Yes.
I think we're losing you a little bit. Maybe if you shut your video off, we're losing you a little bit on the audio. Sorry.
All right, hold on a second. I gotta do a couple of things to that end. Okay, can folks hear me now? Okay, good. You will. So with the Push LA Coalition, we've been having those conversations around changes at the LAPD, especially as it comes to the use of database information and just falsifying information for one, but also in terms of like making sure that it's every community that is represented to be able to advocate for those changes within the police department. We've been also working at the city level with the Office of Racial Equity in order to establish it, to be able to look at what are the policy changes and how are they impacting people of color in the city of Los Angeles. And so these are efforts that are looking at, how to create systems that are more inclusive, that are taking into consideration the importance, again, the important moment that we find ourselves in, but how are we taking into consideration the impact of our policies from both an economic and from a specific perspective. I'm sorry, I'm getting a question about what department in City Hall. The Office of Racial Equity is something that is being advocated for, so this has not been established yet. And so it's something that we continue to fight for, because we know that as major decisions are made, they have an impact on people of color in the city of Los Angeles. And it's important to have input from the community in terms of how those changes are going to, impact for the better or for the worse. And so that's what we're planning for, and working together with these coalitions is how do we use our collective power politically to be able to advance the issues that all of our communities care about. In working with Black Lives Matter Los Angeles, we've been able to, be on daily calls and figure out exactly how we can show up as an immigrant rights organization to really also within our networks and within our staff and the community at large to discuss anti-Blackness within our communities, to be able to talk about the moments, what is being asked of by our Black sisters and brothers, and advocating changes, regarding police violence and use of deadly force. So that's something that, we continue to engage with. These are conversations that are constantly ongoing that are very much about, finding a solution, right? Getting beyond where we've seen business as usual to really advocating for larger systemic change. And so those conversations are working together with many groups to be able to see how we can be helpful in this moment and really be, supporting our sisters and brothers who are suffering during this moment. And so as the movement grows, we continue to work with folks within the Black Lives Movement to be able to organize events, to be able to figure out how we can, show up in a way that is authentic and show up in a way that is going to help the larger vision for this. So at the state level, we've also been working with over 40 organizations, partners pushing for investment for all Californians. And so at this time, where the state is, looking at cuts or austerity measures that are going to be very harmful to poor and working people, we want to make sure that there is a united effort, and we're part of that effort to be able to push back and say, this is not the time to make cuts. This is the time to explore things that have been, good ideas, great ideas for a very long time, but have not actually been implemented. And so as we push for that implementation, as we push and advocate, these are different sectors, the labor movement, community organizations, organizations that are immigrant rights led. So folks trying to come together with a collective strategy to be able to address the idea of cuts in a way that is going to be proactive. So how do we advocate then, during this COVID-19 pandemic for investment systems at the state level to help immigrants, to help, every Californian. And so those conversations are ongoing and actions have already been organized to that end and will continue to be organized to that end. And also the idea of finding more funding to be able to look at folks that are benefiting from the hard labor of Californians, but aren't necessarily being given back to our infrastructure. The other coalition work that we do is related around the California Table for Immigration Reform and the LA Action Table. So the California Table for Immigration Reform is a statewide effort that started back, trying to pass immigration reform back in 2009. And so this is where immigrant rights organizations, LGBT organizations, Muslim organizations, labor, faith, community groups come together and strategize about how we can take collective action. So the response to the DACA decision is an example of that. We've been, working on this Unstoppable Dreams campaign for a very long time, organizing actions, events, and also making sure that we do this collectively across the state with other partner organizations. And so, this is something that has been helpful to that end, to be able to garner the power that we've created for so many years. The immigrant rights movement is so much stronger, now than it ever was. And so these are the moments where we take those opportunities to be able to advance and try to move the needle to make sure that we get to that larger vision for immigration reform. So that's the macro perspective. The local is LA Action Table, same or similar organizations working together to advance policies and protections for immigrants. We were established back in 2016. And so, you know, we want to make sure that through these coalition efforts, we're engaging elected officials, policymakers, the folks that have the power to change. We want to make sure that they hear directly from impacted organizations and community members to that end. So that's in a nutshell our coalition work. And I will hand it back to Aroa. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Polo. Really important work, and proud to say that, you know, this concept of intersectionality is not something that is new to us. It's something that we have been moving forward and will continue to be committed to, as Polo said. Now I'm excited to turn it over to two more members of our team, of our directors team, to give you an update on our Yo Soy California, I Am California campaign, our policy focus. So I'll be turning it over to Diana Colleen, our political director first. Thank you.
Hi everyone, good morning. Diana Colleen, political director. We wanted to start off by updating you all on our new organizational campaign, which is called Yo Soy California, I Am California. And this campaign was a rapid response campaign trying to ensure that while COVID was happening here in California and throughout the country, that the immigrant community, regardless of their status, was included in any form of relief at the local, state, and federal level. And so we launched this campaign with a couple of demands, all falling under three buckets: access to healthcare, access to economic equity, and economic recovery, and access to justice. And so I think the development team has shared or will share the breakdown of demands. But we, like every other campaign that CHIRLA runs, we wanted to make sure that there was a feel component to it, and that the power of our members and the power of immigrant communities and families was behind it. And so we had a very successful launch where we highlighted stories of our members, and they talked about how COVID has impacted them. And maybe later on when Luis talks about DRAI, he can go into some details about a few stories and why the need is so big amongst our people. We, at our launch, we were able to have elected officials at the state and federal level stand with us and say, yes, like this is what we need, and this is what we will fight for in Sacramento, this is what we will fight for in DC. I think, or I hope, a lot of you were able to sign on to the actual campaign. At the beginning of the campaign, we had a goal to get 1,500 signatures, 1,500 sign-ons within 24 hours to be able to publicly show that this campaign was important to all of California. And so once we reached our goal, we were able to publish a one-page ad in the LA Times, and you could see it on your screen. It was a beautiful ad highlighting our demands, highlighting the role that immigrants play within California. And maybe some of your names were printed in the LA Times. We also had 79 organizations sign on supporting these demands. After the public launch and showing the public support through LA Times, we got one of the first wins for the campaign, which is the Disaster Relief Assistance for Immigrants. Again, Luis will talk about that in detail later on, but I think it's important to acknowledge that this was one of the asks we had as part of this campaign. A lot of advocacy happened, a lot of conversations with the governor's office happened to make this possible. And right now we're actually close to finishing that part of the campaign in execution and giving people real dollars into their hands. We also had our CHIRLA Advocacy Day. Every year, we get a bus and our members drive up to Sacramento and advocate for the priority legislation for that year. This year was no different. We were able to do it via Zoom. Joseph will talk about what that looked like in getting some elected officials to work with us, and just how beautiful it was to continue. And I think the beautiful part, to get our members on Zoom, walk them through how to mute themselves, how to show the camera, how to raise their hand, how to do the virtual clap. I think that's all part of the leadership development that CHIRLA is known for. The campaign is not over. There's still more. We know we are not winning like we're supposed to be winning, like we deserve to be winning. We're just getting started. And I'll hand it over to Joseph to talk about what the demands are looking like, what have we won, and what's still on our to-do list.
Thank you, Diana, and thank you for for all the folks that joined this morning and for your support. I think one of the things that I want to mention that obviously our advocacy changed dramatically as it relates to when the pandemic came on. Before we had we have an office in Washington D.C., we have an office in Sacramento, but this meant that all the staffers, the members of Congress and state legislators, as well as city and county elected officials were also working from home. So that means that we have to really figure out a way to engage them in a very different way. This time also show the political work that we have done with some of those offices, as it was very difficult at times to get a hold of them. And so thankfully, Angelica has done a lot of work with them, and we have, to some extent, some personal numbers from some of the members that she was able to actually call them directly when we need to. And so I think, we took the advocacy to a different level as it relates to, how to connect with elected officials in their offices. But I do want to, before, transitioning to some of the wins and challenges, I want to highlight a couple of things. And you see on the screen, a couple of pictures that before March, we were trying to really engage elected officials. I'm just going to share some numbers as it relates to what is that we've done between March all the way to now as it relates to the engagement of elected officials. So when we run some numbers and the engagement that we have with all levels of elected officials, we actually engage them a minimum 150 times, from town halls to one-on-ones to calls with them. And a couple of key meetings are on the screen where Angelica, was in a meeting with the governor, with several Latino leaders, where we had an advocacy meeting, advocacy day in Sacramento, meeting with elected officials. But then recently, when the DACA decision came on, we were able to put 2 of our members in a meeting with the governor to just explain to him what the decision of DACA meant. But then also our members conveyed to him that even though DACA, the decision was great, one of the things that they were pushing forward is that we are, our immigrant communities is really suffering financially, and that we need a permanent economic recovery for them. So I think I just wanted to really put some background behind those pictures, because I think it tells a story as it relates to the difficulty of our advocacy, the transparency of our democracy, and how we were trying to work within those challenges. I think on the next slide, I'm going to go into a little bit about some of the specifics as it relates to what is that we were doing in numbers. And this is something that, we engage, at all levels in about 26 initiatives. So meaning that we provided technical assistance, we were pushing for a bill, et cetera. So I think this is the scope of our work. And again, my department is kind of small, but we were able to figure out a way to stretch ourselves with the help of all of our team at CHIRLA, to really make sure that any proposal had a component on immigrant, especially if it was something that they needed or our communities needed, or it was something that was working against them. Because one of the things that I will talk a little bit is some of the defensive work that we did that was not seen, and I really want to highlight that. I think most of our work, is divided, but we did significant work at the federal level. Again, not having the members be in Washington D.C., everything doing over the phone and by Zoom, posed some of the difficulties of advocacy. I think on the next slide, I really want to go over some of the specific wins that we had as it relates to everything that we have done in regards to grassroots and sharing the stories of our leaders, because I think as Diana mentioned and Angelica also mentioned, one of our core principles and what makes us a little bit different is the leadership of our members. And so every story that we had a political or policy impact. And so the engagement, as I mentioned, we have more than 115 engagement between March and now with different offices of electeds, but I want to highlight a couple of them that I think are important. The first one, because then they led to a policy win or a policy progress on an issue. The first one was with the U.S. Senator Kamala Harris, in which we pulled a call with her and different leaders across California. As I mentioned, Angelica engaged the governor, not only the staff, but then also himself several times. We met, we also provided as feedback to Tom Sire, who is leading the economic task force in California. And our hope is for that task force to make sure to include immigrants in the recovery recommendations that they're going to make. We had several meetings, calls with Mayor Garcetti, County Board of Supervisors, but then also the chair and the vice chair of the Latino caucus. I just highlighted some key meetings that we engage directly because those led to some policy wins, as I mentioned. The other thing that, as I mentioned, are the stories of our leaders were critical, and we want to make sure that they were part of different key events. And I highlighted a couple of them in which there were a lot of digital town halls, and some of those town halls we were able to place the voice of immigrants because we felt that they're important. For instance, in the town hall that the people, congressional woman of color, one of our leaders in CDM provided his story about how having DACA and undocumented families and being excluded from the CARES Act had an effect on them and in California. But then also there was a town hall with all the caucuses, ethnic caucuses, in which we were also able to get a member, and the same message came from her as it relates to DACA is great, but my family is a mixed status family and the federal government is excluding us from that despite the fact that we're paying taxes. And also working with our national partners, such as FIRM, to really convey those stories. Those stories and those engagement led to policy wins. So I think the first one that I mentioned, the passage of the CARES Act, even though it excluded immigrants, both undocumented, but some who were citizens and legal permanent residents and have ties to undocumented immigrants. The CARES Act, one of the provisions was the business loan program. And that was something that we did heavy work on it. And Angelica engaged a lot with members of Congress. That particular provision of the bill provided relief for small businesses. And at one point, there was a discussion to actually exclude anyone who did not match their Social Security number with SSI, with the Social Security Administration. And so we were able to actually defeat that in any type of attempt to exclude businesses who may have employed someone who was undocumented. So that loan provision was critical not only for businesses who employ immigrants, but then also not-profit organizations. And I really want to highlight that provision because we did significant work behind the scenes. The passage of the HEROES Act, as I mentioned, the fact that the CARES Act ignored undocumented immigrants, when all the engagement that we did at the federal level led to the first introduction of the HEROES Act, but then the passage of it. And I think that's something that we really want to highlight. At the state level, Diana and others already spoke about the DRAI program, but I think I want to also emphasize at the state and regional level, the creation, the guarantee that COVID-19 testing was actually going to be regardless of status, and that it was not going to have any immigration or citizenship requirements. And so at the state level, at one point, we were actually, we've informed the state that there were some cases of some places that they were doing the COVID-19 that they were requiring citizenship on their website and English proficiency. So we actually did a lot of work to make sure that that was changed at the state level. There's also on our letter that was initially released that Diana mentioned, we indicated that we wanted to have the collection of racial data into the collection of those who were infected, those who were in the hospitals, and those who passed away. The reason for that, because we believe that essentially our folks were going to be impacted. And I think that actually led to significant changes at the county level and at the state level. And to that end, Angelica has been very involved with the advancement project in really highlighting the discrepancies between how this COVID-19 is affecting communities of color, especially Black and Latino communities. So I think that's something that I really want to highlight. At the state level, something that we don't talk about is some of the advocacy that we did. So based on the wins that we had, there was this loan program available for AB 540 students and undocumented students or DACA students. But those loans, if they, obviously folks have to repay those loans. So we were able to work with the UC and CSU system to work a plan, especially those folks who are affected by COVID-19. At the local level, we passed, this week, the city council finally passed a rental relief for folks that would allow them to get rental relief regardless of immigration status. That is not only at the city level, but then also at the county level. The other thing that I want to mention is that at the county level, we were able to push for a moratorium on transfers between local law enforcement, so the sheriffs and ICE. So at this point, there is a moratorium. There are no transfers from LA County to ICE, regardless of the crime. And our hope is that that moratorium becomes actually permanent. The last thing that I will say that we also assisted the mayor's office when they were working in the creation of the Angelino card for them to know and understand some of the challenges of immigrants. As it relates to the challenges, one, the state has signed, the governor and the state legislature has agreed on a budget, and some of the things that we wanted in that budget were excluded. And they were excluded because of one major thing, and that is the deficit that we've seen at the state, but then also at the regional and local level. So that's going to be the challenges that we're going to see moving forward. But then the other one is political will. So I think this is, in hard times, who are your friends and who are not your friends. And so I think this is a good exercise. So, unfortunately, it's a good exercise for us to understand that, we might be, we can say that we are a pro-immigrant state, pro-immigrant city and county, but when it comes to actually investing to our communities, there's a lot of work that needs to happen. I think that's going to be the next phase of our campaign. How do we make sure to hold people accountable, and how do we change the mentality that in times of deficits, our folks will not be included in their budget?
Thank you, Joseph. Thank you so much. We'll turn it back to Diana now to speak about the immigrant political power and how we are looking forward to advancing the immigrant agenda and winning in 2020.
Yes, so with all this happening, we can't forget it's an election year. Luckily, the March primary passed before the stay-at-home orders happened, before the peak of COVID-19. And so, the pandemic did not affect our Get Out the Votes effort for the March primary. But through our census program, which was happening in March and April, the field component to it, we were able to make some changes and pivot and get real numbers and still have real conversations. Before I go into what's happening leading up to November, I wanted to talk a little bit about the census program. So as you've seen the response rates for the state, they're okay. They're not where we need to be. And of course, the majority of the non-response or low response rate neighborhoods are people in our communities. And so originally we only had a census campaign plan that went from April 2019 to June of 2020. And so we're just working and finalizing the plan that'll now take us from June to October, since that is the new census end date from the Census Bureau. What we're going to be focusing on now is really micro-targeting the low response neighborhoods where our base lives, where our members live. For those of you familiar with the precinct captain models, it's the idea that you get the people out to vote within your neighborhood, right? We're doing this for the census. Can we make sure that everyone that lives within my street or my 2-block radius has completed the census? And again, it's very micro-targeting. So it's a bit different than the big campaign ads or radio ads or TV ads that you have been seeing. We feel that at this point, maybe that message is just not getting to the people who haven't responded. And so we really have to have or continue the real conversation. So that's what's to come for the census from now to October. With the Immigrant Political Power Project and the electoral Get Out the Vote component to it, this year with the March primary and the November general, we have a goal of contacting 318,960 voters, Latino voters, immigrant voters, infrequent voters. During the March primary, we were able to talk to 141,412. And so we believe we can get to the rest for leading up to November. This is going to be a different campaign, and it's using the lessons learned from the Census Field program, from the DRAI program that's happening right now, from all of the remote working that's happening, and from different organizations doing incredible work. We are putting together Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C in regards to getting out the vote. And all of those plans vary depending on what the stay-at-home order will look like around that time. But we feel good about this. We will have a C3 and a C4 component to it. You all know the big priority issue going up to November for both the C3 and the C4 is schools and communities first. And we feel like this is a big solution and key to the budget deficit that's happening and the lack of resources in our community. For informational purposes, the C4 will be also playing a heavy role leading up to November. More to come. You can check out the C4's website and the Facebook page next week, where they will be launching some endorsements. Overall, we're planning ahead, getting ready for November, being creative, and the key is to use the momentum that's happening with the Black uprisings, with the DACA decision, with COVID-19, with the census, to make sure that we know our community wants to vote. So our role as an organization is to make sure they have all of the information, the tools, the resources to get out an educated vote come November 3rd. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Diana. Very exciting. We look forward to sharing the plans with everyone, and also additional information for those of you that were not aware or also might be interested in our C4, the CHIRLA Action Fund political work. Now I will turn it over to Luis Perez, who is our Director of Legal Services, to, of course, walk us through not just the DRAI program, but also the big Supreme Court decision that we had on DACA last week. Thank you so much. Luis? Can't hear you. You want to try to come in and out? Let's try to have you log in, log out and log back in, and maybe Angelica, if you can take it away for us to talk about the decision.
I think Luis just needs to unmute his phone because he's using both. So his phone is muted. No? Okay, I will continue so let's see if we can get him back on. So in terms of legal services, so we have an incredible update around the DACA decision. You heard it in the news. The Supreme Court made a decision to keep the program as it was created. However, it also stated that what it really said was that the Trump administration has actually ended the program unlawfully and through a capricious and arbitrary manner. And so that means that the program continues, but it also, Chief Judge Roberts actually said, kind of outlined how the program would end. But we received the decision with incredible level of enthusiasm, because we knew that the reason we got to this place was because of all the incredible engagement of our immigrant youth and many documented individuals who now themselves are adults with their children, with their families. And so just the incredible level of courage that folks have shown. And so where do we go from here? The first thing to say is that CHIRLA has continued to do DACA renewals during this entire stay-at-home order. And in fact, using virtual methods every Tuesday and Thursday, has been able to do the renewals of individuals. So the average number of individuals who are seen on Tuesdays and Thursdays is about 85 people a day who have been able to get those renewals. Now with this new situation, what's going to happen is that we are first waiting for some clearance of administrative clearance and decision and guidance from USCIS, but we also believe there's a 21-day period for that, but we also believe we have to be ready. And so what the legal department did was introduce or actually submit a new DACA filing so that when the 21 days are over around this administrative wait and as we're waiting for USCIS, that we have actually a person who is ready to go on day 22 to have their case heard by USCIS. Before the decision to actually rescind the program, there were lots of different individuals who were actually working with CHIRLA to submit their new application. Those are some of the individuals we're working with and talking to them as to whether they want to move forward. But there's so much to come. And then I wanted to show in terms of the DACA, there was the day of the decision, as we've been waiting for so many months. There were car caravans all over the state in celebration, with one of the largest here in Los Angeles, but in San Bernardino, Orange County, the Antelope Valley, Bakersfield, Ventura, all the way to Modesto and also Sacramento. So our immigrant youth leaders received the decision with an incredible level of enthusiasm. I want to see if Luis is back on, just to make sure that I pass along the
Yes, I am.
Okay, wonderful, Luis. So
Yes.
you take it away from here.
Great. So yes, I wanted to first mention that our legal services are still functioning. The other services that we may not be as interested to know about right now, including our legal consultations, those continue to happen on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We also have our family unity work, which includes a lot of the U visa work that has deadlines. So that work we couldn't really put on hold. So we still have those. A lot of those consultations happen over the phone, and we have limited parking lot drop-off hours where people can come and deliver their documents that we need to work on their forms. And a lot of it is really working on current cases. It's been a lot more difficult to take new cases, but we're still doing the consultations to identify those for when we reopen. Our removal defense unit has had a lot of difficulty with accessing our own clients at Adelanto Detention Center. So we've been part of both, they call habeas petitions to release our clients that are very vulnerable to COVID-19, people who are not able to have their own space so that they're not, in close proximity to other people. So we've been successful both in individual habeas writs, getting people released, and also in doing more of a class action to force Adelanto Detention Center to depopulate the immigrant population at Adelanto so that COVID guidelines can be abided by. But there have been a lot of challenges there. We were able to get a private line so that attorneys can have consultations with detainees in privacy without somebody listening over those phone calls. And there's still work to be done, but we've been very busy on that front. In terms of DACA, we were able to switch very quickly because the office at CHIRLA closed back in March to virtual DACA clinics. And we've been able to do about 600 DACA renewals per month. And this is more than we were able to do in the physical LA office, because now we're using our entire legal team, including the staff in San Juan Capistrano, the staff in Sacramento, Sonoma, Porterville, and all the satellite offices as one big unit that takes, that are part of this virtual DACA renewal clinic. And sometimes we're able to do between 65 and 85 individual applications per day, every Tuesday and Thursday. So that's been very successful for us to continue to do. Already, just on our virtual clinics, we've helped over 2,000 folks renew their DACA since March. So that's a big help. And that was also partly successful because of the advocacy that we did with the state of California to provide an additional $4.5 million to help with USCIS fees. So there was no need to wait for folks to come up to save money to pay for their fees. We were able just to provide that. And we are at the last leg of that funding. So we were already given a cap of 202 applications that were able to help in the month of June, even though we were expected to help 600 people. The only benefit is, like you've already heard last Thursday, a week ago, we had the DACA decision for the Supreme Court. And up to that Monday, I was very convinced that we were going to have a negative decision. It was really that Monday before, when we had the LGBT rights decision, that I began to think that there was a possibility of getting a positive decision. And in fact, we did get a positive DACA decision last Thursday, upholding the DACA program and upholding the district court's decisions that the Trump administration had tried to get rid of the program in a wrong way. Unfortunately, it gave almost like a recipe to the Trump administration of, this is how you can get rid of the program, by doing things correctly. So the program continues to be at risk, and renewals continue to be as important, right? Because it's not because we have the whole thing. We're waiting to hear directions from USCIS about new applications for people that have never applied before. We went ahead and submitted one application last Thursday as our test case, because how USCIS responds to that one application that we filed may be more telling than their silence, really, than their silence and their delay in putting up any instructions about how to do new DACA applications. So that's really our thinking about submitting that first DACA application last Thursday, as a way to force them to give us some answers, because we already know that they're against this decision and that they may be delaying any instructions. And actually, one of the things that I think may be happening is they may be buying time for the Trump administration to get that recipe in place and submit a DACA opinion, or their DACA, terminating the DACA program properly. So anybody who waited for instructions may actually be out of luck if that happens before the instructions come out. So that was our really thinking, that by submitting this application, we might get a better sense sooner than any instructions. And that also may create the plaintiffs or potential plaintiffs for any additional lawsuits that may be needed. So that's our thinking. But we do have a whole drawer of pending applications that we were not able to file before September 5th of 2017. That will be our priority, to look at those that are already our clients, that are already in the pipeline, before we open up our legal services for initial DACA services to new people. So that's really what I can say on DACA. We're still waiting for instructions and see what happens. Let me switch a little bit over to the DRAI program. And as you may already know, there was an announcement by the governor that they were allocating $75 million in state funding for assistance of $500 each. That would have helped 150,000 individual Californians. There was an allocation of 55 million, or of 55,500 individuals that would be helped in LA and Orange County combined. Out of those 55,500, CHIRLA contracted with the state to do 36,500. So a big chunk, with the majority, I would say, of this allocation, CHIRLA was contracted to do. And our focus and energy and our staffing has really been to work on the applications, because there is a deadline of June 30th that we need to do all the intakes, all the applications by June 30th, with a little bit more flexibility to do the actual document review, approvals, and distribution later in the month of July. So all those complaints that you might have heard about DACA's limestone, the CHIRLA limestone work for DRAI, we've already processed 27,107 applications. So we've been very busy. Our phones have been ringing nonstop Monday through Friday. We started to include last Saturday, and we'll also work next Saturday to do more applications to meet our deliverable by June 30th. But we already done, like I said, over 27,000 applications. There's 9,383 remaining that we have this week to do, and half of next week to do. And out of those 27,000 applications, we've already delivered over 6,000 of those cards to people's homes through certified mail, and in some cases, limited cases, by pickup at the office. This is people who were not able to receive it by mail. So we know that this is something that's really helping people very, very much, especially those people that we work with, that we know that $500 could mean a whole week or two of work if they're street vendors and whatnot, or people who just don't have any other income and they don't have access to unemployment and the other benefits. So we're very happy to be working on this program, despite the criticism about this only helping about 6% of the entire undocumented population in the state of California. We see this as a first step, as Diana mentioned earlier, as a win to our Yo Soy California campaign, and also the first of programs that we hope and expect to see after this program wraps up. We hope to see additional programs, and we've shown that CHIRLA has the capacity and the ability to create very difficult or very successful programs in very challenging times and under very challenging circumstances. So I'm very happy to have been the lead for this program, of course, with Angelica's leadership and all of the other directors helping in many, many ways. This program has really taken our community education, civic engagement, legal, membership, communications, and organizing team to, in many cases, dedicate 100% of their time to this program alone for the last 2 months. So again, this is something that we're about to wrap up, but I feel really successful that we will be able to deliver all of the actual cards and benefit to people's homes by the end of July. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Luis. Really important work. And just to wrap us up, just to say that we will, as CHIRLA, along with our partners and allies and your support, we will continue to urge and demand and advocate for all of these protections and for this economic justice and healthcare support and beyond for our communities. The last few thoughts that I will leave you with is to, first of all, say a big thank you to everyone on this call right now and also watching the recording. You have, of course, seen the importance of our work and the value that we have to the community. I think as a result of COVID and all the increase, what was already very trying times for our immigrant communities over the last few years, now have gotten taken to new levels in our families have really turned to us as a lifeline, and we have been able to be there, be responsive for them. And so we have seen the value that we hold to the communities and the trust that they have in us in new ways. And so through your capacity investments over the years, or for some of you more recently, you have really helped to make that possible. We want to really accentuate that because you have helped to make us stronger as an organization. We want to continue to encourage you to invest in power building organizations. In our case, we have a direct service and an advocacy hybrid model. And so we encourage you to continue to believe in the power policy, to believe in a lot of the efforts that we have talked about today and how important that is for us to continue to receive that support. So thank you. In order to win this year, like many of my colleagues talked about, keeping an eye on immigration reform as our goal and inclusion for all, I think our top priority is to remain flexible and responsive and resilient. We've seen that. I think COVID has taught us many, many lessons. And so a few of the things that I think we're going to be looking to do is to continue to evaluate the impact of this health and economic crisis, not just for our communities, but also for us internally as an organization. We are aware that things are a little bit uncertain. As you have heard, there will be cuts in a huge budget deficit for the state, which could impact us through our government grants, and also on the space of philanthropy. There's still, we know, a lot of changes and a lot of decisions to be made over the next year or two. We're going to continue to learn from our emergency response to strengthen our continuity plans to make sure that we can be resilient in the face of threats like COVID. That means growing our reserves, putting funds into our rainy day fund. And so that has been a really big help to get us through these times, right? And then also continuing to focus on our innovative solutions with a special focus on racial equity, like you heard about earlier. We are, of course, looking to continue these hybrid models of service delivery. What that means for us as an organization is the maintaining, and in some areas of work, possibly even increasing our staffing, improving our tech, and then putting dollars towards new ways of organizing and servicing our base. And so in a nutshell, what that means is essentially core and general support. And that is made possible through all of you, whether that's grants, event sponsorships, individual donations, because I know we have some of our major donors in the room. That's what makes our work possible. So we encourage you to continue to do that. See us as a resource. We know that a lot of these decisions happen in the boardrooms, happen in committees, happen at home. And so think of us as a resource. We're here to provide information, and we want to seek to continue to deepen our philanthropic partnerships with all of you. Last but not least, I will turn you over to the last slide, which has some dates that are coming up. We're going to be following up along with the recording with links on how to connect to these virtual events. Artivism is a really special one for us that is coming up June 29th. We have our America's Families film screening coming up on July 9th. And then a really special one to us and important for us to continue is our yearly gala, which will be happening virtually this year on September 30th. And we hope to send you a save the date very, very soon. So thank you so much for joining us, allowing us to go over by just a few minutes. Thank you so much, and we appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I just want to also say, if we didn't get to your questions, please follow up with Aurora on any question that you might have. But just really want to say we appreciate you. You've made us able to respond in this very difficult moment through your support. And really want to say thank you to our amazing development team, and also all our directors. And I think with that, we will be concluding our webinar around CHIRLA's work. But I know that we didn't get to a lot of questions. We try to answer some of those questions. So my hope is that you will follow up with us individually to ask any additional information, and we will try to answer and get some of the information you requested from us in the chat box.
Absolutely. We will be following up with those questions in the chat box. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Angelica, for closing us out, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you.